Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to Altitude Adjustment. I am going to be joined by @AndyNFL. I'm not even sure of his last name. It might be NFL. We don't know, but we are going to find out. And before we get started, I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew that I do all of my shows live. I don't pre-record and then mouth my show as it is like half live, half pre-recorded, because that's terrible. Absolutely terrible content. Who on earth that would ever consider themselves an entertainer would pre-record an entire show and then mouth the words of said show? Couldn't be me, couldn't be Andy, because this is Altitude Adjustment.
Hey, Bill, I'm in the mood for a switch up. I hit the function, hit the rose till I hiccup. I hit the stage and leave with money that's a stick up.
Welcome again, everybody, to the show. And Andy, before we get started, man, why don't you give the people an introduction of who you are, where we can find your work, and what you're doing here tonight?
Well, I'm AndyNFL. I am a draft analyst on Twitter, on Substack. I've been doing draft work for the 2026 draft since the beginning of May. So I've been diving into a lot of these prospects for the course of many, many months. And I'm joining Altitude Adjustment today to provide my insight to say, or to put out there what the Denver Broncos need to do this offseason. And of course, just give the lovely viewers out there some draft analysis.
Well, man, I'm glad you're here. I'm happy to have you. And let's just jump right into it, shall we? So the offseason is upon us. The Broncos fell just short for one reason or another. Oh my gosh, sorry, I'm getting a feedback. Hold on. Okay. Could you hear any of that, or was that just in my headphones? Fantastic. Going crazy. Let me take to that. This is just proof that we do it live, and sometimes shit happens live, and it's okay. We don't need to pre-record because it's authentic. Anyway, the season is over, one way or another, and we're not going to get too bogged down onto the details of why the Broncos did not play in the Super Bowl and why they ultimately did not win a Super Bowl. We know why they didn't go. We know why they didn't win, and we'll just leave it at that. So now, Andy, our job is to fill some holes. Coming off of the best season that the Broncos franchise has had in about a decade, you look at the big picture of the roster, Andy, and think, oh, there's not too much that they need. The team won 14 games, only lost 3. They were the number 1 seed. But our job is to make sure that they are even better, that they are well prepared to repeat as the number 1 seed and as AFC West champions, and hopefully as AFC champions next year. So what position are we going to start tonight, Andy?
I think a good one to start with is the offensive line in particular, but offensive guard is what I'm looking at, because I think Ben Powers, who is the starting left guard, there's a lot of question of if he'll be back next year or not. I mean, he would free a lot of money up. I'm not sure the exact number, but a substantial amount. Where
I know if it's a post June 1st release, it's something like, I want to say 10 or 11 million.
Yeah, it's up there. So there's certainly a lot of pros to moving on from him. But the problem is then you have to fill a left guard spot, because that is, not the most important position on the line, but we saw guards are important, man. That is one of the reasons why Jarrett Stidham was in hell, quite frankly, against New England. We saw in the Super Bowl a couple days ago, Drake May was in hell because of the guard dysfunction and just the entire line's dysfunction. But you see how important left guard of a position is. And Alex Palczewski is good. Is he a franchise starter at left guard? I'm not sure. Well, jury's still out. but I think it's very important to bring up offensive guard with, Ben Powers' future here in question.
And I think if they do move on from Ben Powers, and it feels like at the very least they'll restructure him. But what we saw from Palcho this year, I mean, you almost can't put a number on Palchevsky's value to this team. In case anybody forgot, last season, the 2024 season, McGlinchey went down. Palcho filled in admirably. There wasn't much of a drop off at all. And that's the number one thing that you can hope for. When they lost when Powers first went down and Matt Parrott was filling in, he almost single-handedly lost them that game in London against the Jets. Not sure why Palcho wasn't the right guard immediately. Parrott apparently was playing with an injury, but my stance on that, man, is like if you are healthy enough to play, you don't get to use an injury as an excuse. A la Russell Wilson in what was it, 2022, one of his first years here, where it's like, oh, he had the lat trap or whatever. It doesn't matter, man. If you are on that field, then you need to perform. And so I'm not trying to hear that from Matt Parrott. And thankfully, when they entered Palcho, who was technically the third guy on their depth chart, he was as good, if not better, as good, if not better, than Ben Powers was at that right guard position. And I think the team saw that, the fans saw that, everybody with eyeballs saw that. Palcho is going to be way cheaper than it is to hold on to Powers. So I think maybe that is the direction that they go in. Now, I will say this, since you're the draft guy and we're going to be talking about offensive line first, Garrett Bowles, obviously finalist for Protector of the Year. Quinn Miners, finalist for Protector of the Year. But Bowles is getting up there in age. McGlinchey is getting up there in age. Wattenberg signed the extension, but he was a little bit shaky at times. Anyone familiar with the program knows how Coach Pat feels about Luke Wattenberg's play. So I'm going to kick it to you. Let's start with some of the offensive linemen that you really like in this class. Because even though those positions are pretty much shored up, Andy, at some point they have to start drafting offensive linemen. And I felt like the last time that they took a tackle within the first 2 days of the draft was Garrett Bowles, unless you're counting Dalton Reisner as a guard.
Yeah. It's an interesting offensive line class. I don't think beyond or where the Broncos will be picking at 30, I don't think they'll use a first-round pick on a offensive lineman. But if they hypothetically did, a guy that I would look at is Texas A&M's guard Chase Basantis, a very well-rounded skill set, really solid athletic profile that makes a lot of evaluators intrigued. Strong, smooth mover, very good hands to drive defenders. There's some general inconsistency and like limited hip flexibility, I guess. But I think he is going to be off the board on the first day. If I think his floor is top 50. So if hypothetically the Broncos were to use a first-round pick on a left guard, I think Chase Basantis would certainly be on that list. And the other guy that I would look at is Denver native Oregon guard Emmanuel Pregnon, strong, powerful guard, another one. NFL body, I think he's 6'5", 320 pounds, power through his lower body, explosive hands, good anchor and pass protection. The only big weakness is he struggles with elite athletes, and that has turned some evaluators off with him. His consensus is kind of everywhere right now, but another that I could see go in the first round, if not probably second round. If he were to fall, if you look at, the people who are lower on him, if he's there at pick 62, I would sprint that pick in, even if you aren't too even if we keep Ben Powers, I think Pregnon would be a phenomenal ad behind him.
I mean, at some point you have to start thinking about depth to this offensive line, and yeah, that's an excellent point. Any other names that we should be aware of in terms of like adding to this offensive line in the draft?
I think one that is going to go in like the third, fourth round, kind of mid-round bucket is Boise State tackle, who's going to move into guard Cage Casey. Played tackle for his whole career, I'm pretty sure, at Boise State. He's going to move into guard, had a big Senior Bowl week. One I've been intrigued with for a while. You look at guys who have played in like the G5 or FCS ranks that go from tackle to guard instantly. I mean, you look at Gray Zabel. Let's look at him. Obviously, Cage Casey isn't as good as Gray Zabel, but just these guys who come from these lower ranks can move from tackle to guard, and their skill set just gets better. I mean, playing outside at tackle, if you're kind of poor on an island or have shorter arm length, in Casey's case, it's shorter arm length, you can shore him up at guard. I think a fourth round pick on him, that Saints fourth, which is going to be around pick 108 or something like that. before compensatory picks. You look at Cage Casey with a pick like that would be a really good developmental add in this left guard room, especially. You move on from Powers, you say Palczewski starts the year at left guard, and then you get someone behind him with a top 110 pick in that bucket. I think the offensive line would look better than it could.
Yeah, and we're all about raising the floor, right? And speaking of raising the floor, we're going to shift to the defensive line because that's where the game is won. And anybody who watched that boring ass Super Bowl and saw what the Seahawks were able to do, that was a massive reason why they were able to. Oh, I'm going to interrupt myself because Marky brought up a good name that I wanted to get your thoughts on. Keelan Rutledge out of Georgia Tech, total beast of a guy. Like,
yeah,
what's the terminology? Like, can block in a phone booth.
Yeah, phone booth. Yep.
Yeah, he's a total phone booth guy. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, like Marky mentioned, bona fide stud run blocker, super powerful phone booth kind of blocker. You guys hit it on the head. This is a guy who could end up in my top 100. I'm not exactly sure what the board's going to look like. I hopefully have a top 100 updated out here in the next week or two. But Keelan Rutledge certainly could be in that list. A guy I could see going in the first 2 days. Georgia Tech establishes a run-heavy offense, and they ran behind Keelan Rutledge a lot, which I thought was very telling to what he could be in the NFL. Like, Georgia Tech put a lot of weight on his shoulders, put a lot of the offense on him, and he found a way to get it done. Very intriguing guy as we get to the third, fourth round.
All right. Thank you, Marky, for that. Appreciate you watching and tuning in as always. Back over to the defensive line as I interrupted myself. It feels like a foregone conclusion that they're not bringing back John Franklin Myers. Hopefully they pull an audible and end up bringing him back because, first of all, and we're going to talk a little bit about free agency as well, but this is going to be mostly draft-centric. Very, very difficult to replace a JFM. I mean, not necessarily, like, he's not padding the stats and, like, filling the stat sheet that, maybe you would expect for a guy that's going to get the money that he's going to get, but an absolutely invaluable piece to this defensive line. And again, I really hope that they re-sign him. But if you've heard any of his interviews or follow him on Twitter, it really seems like they were disinterested. And I know he said that he was happy for guys like Malcolm Roach and Zach Allen who got their extensions. But you could tell there was just a little bit of hurt in his voice coming through. So we're going to play the hypothetical game and say that they do not, in fact, bring back John Franklin Myers. How do you fill that void on the defensive line? And before anybody says Savion Jones, he's fine. I think he played 33 snaps, as I think Marky had pointed out in our group chat. And yeah, I mean, maybe he develops. He's going to have to put some weight on. But to think that he's going to be able to step in year two after seldom playing in his first year and replicate the production that JFM had, it's a very, very lofty and unrealistic expectation. So let's get a look at the draft, Andy, because free agent wise, there's not a whole lot to choose from outside of JFM himself.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why every fan base I see on Twitter is clamoring for JFM because he is the best interior defensive lineman on the market. And before I start going through some of the draft prospects, I will say, if the replacement for JFM is someone on the roster right now, I actually think Savion Jones is probably the third option for that role. I think Malcolm Roach or even Oyoma Owazurike are sooner to jump into bigger roles than Savion Jones, who I believe is only active for 2 games this season. But there is a guy, again, I don't know if they'll go D-tackle in the first round, but if they do, I was really intrigued reading Daniel Jeremiah's mock 1.0, where he had Peter Woods, the defensive tackle from Clemson, going to the Denver Broncos at 30. Big man with big twitch, 6'3", 310 pounds. Coming into the season during the summer, he was one of my top prospects. Very underwhelming year for Clemson as a whole, but Woods in particular was one of the guys who disappointed just because he was expected to be one of the first couple picks off the board of the draft, and now there's some questions even if he'll be a first-round pick. I think he should be. I still have him as my top defensive tackle in the draft currently. Really quick, evades blocks in tight quarters. The problem with him is he has so many explosive traits, but you just don't see him finish on plays enough. And that's ultimately probably the biggest reason why the consensus is faltering. There was virtually no production this year. And just so many question marks popped up in tape this year, but really good motor, scheme flexibility all over the defensive line. I think he would fit like a glove to replace JFM. So if he hypothetically somehow fell to the Broncos at 30, that would certainly be one that it'd be hard to pass up on him there. And then another guy.
Something that I wanted to add. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Andy.
Okay. One more guy that I wanted to mention as a potential JFM replacement, who I think, again, fits like a glove, is Christian Miller, defensive tackle from Georgia. Energetic, very reliable, versatility all over the defensive front. Just disruptor at heart. Georgia always establishes a very big time physical presence as a defense, and Christian Miller was one of those guys this year that had to step up and had to be in that role. Again, kind of like Peter Woods, not much production this year, didn't finish plays great, but has the ability to evade blocks. And I think another guy that plays sort of similarly to JFM and just could fit like a glove in terms of that kind of 4-eye role that JFM plays.
Yeah, and that was what I wanted to get your opinion on, because you brought up production a bunch and how some of these guys, maybe the production wasn't there this past season. And it felt like that was kind of a trend of last year's draft class, of like all of the pass rushers that went in the first round. It was like the knock on them was they didn't have production. They weren't sacking the quarterback. They weren't finishing plays necessarily, but all the physical traits were there. So how much stock do you put into like production at the college level, and whether or not that'll translate to success? Like, how important is it? Obviously, like, you need to be toolsy, but at some point you have to have production, right? So where are you drawing the line with that? Like, how important is college production to you?
Yeah, it really varies. I think it's more of a tape thing than a stats thing. If you are seeing these guys consistently win, but they are just like getting unlucky on some of these sacks, then I don't really put much stock into it at all. Admittedly, I thought Shamar Stewart was close to a lot last year, and I had him as a first rounder, as many did, after he had a historic combine. But if I didn't feel like he came close, I wouldn't have had him high. There has to be like a line where it's like someone that gets 2 sacks but a boatload of pressures, that's still a really good edge rusher. Someone who gets 2 sacks and virtually no pressures, that's a guy I'm going to be lower
Bit of a
on.
red flag.
Yeah.
And speaking of red flags, let's just steer clear of anybody that maybe has a James Pierce type of background. If you've seen the news all this past week, we got a couple comments in the chat. D-Mark, what's up, Dad? Nice to see you, man. Thanks for watching. How do you guys feel about Dante Corleone out of Cincy? And obviously, I love him because he's very clearly Italian with the name Corleone. And if there's one thing this team needs, it's more Italians. But a guy, he probably could have come out last year and maybe been like a late day 2, kind of early day 3 type of pick. Probably, I would say like mid to late second round right now. I really like Corleone, and he's not. I wouldn't necessarily say he's like a JFM type. He's more of like he's taking up space. He's a body mover. What do you think about Corleone?
Yeah, he's a really interesting one because he had a phenomenal freshman season, and there was like so much first round buzz on him after that freshman season. But there's just so many injury concerns there, and some regression year to year. I think he's a day 3 guy, but I would not mind taking a flyer on him when you get to like 5th round, that kind of range. He's an interesting player.
And then Respect My Co's Mikey wants to know, and I'm not even going to try to say that name, so I'm just going to let you sound that out there.
Well, he's not in this draft. I'm pretty sure he was in the 2019 draft. So he's trying to throw a curveball.
I think he means as a free agent.
Oh, yeah, I'm not too familiar with him. I just know what class he was in.
Kodiak says, "Wow, Andy with an actual webcam. Let's go. Maybe now Kodiak will get an actual webcam, Andy, and start doing professional content. We would really appreciate that." Oh man, yeah, Mikey was trying to
Sorry for my language.
Stump. That's okay. We cuss all the fucking time here. I was trying to stump his truck. Pause. Yeah, pause that big time. Anybody else that we need to be aware of, like on the interior defensive line?
Ultimately, like I would say a lot of the nose tackles, but Vance Joseph doesn't really use true nose tackles, which I've always kind of critiqued. I feel like this defense kind of needs a true run stuffing nose tackle, but you just don't see it much. So I would throw out Caden McDonald, who was the big mauler in the Ohio State defense, who just cleared so many lanes for people. But I just don't see the fit there really.
And while we're talking about like on the defensive line, why don't we kick it out to edge? I think Dondre Tillman, restricted free agent, if I'm not mistaken, maybe exclusive rights again. Still not entirely sure the difference there. All I know is he's not an unrestricted free agent. I would assume that they'd bring him back for cheap because not only does he give you value rushing the passer, but he was very good on special teams this past year. Obviously, Jonah Ellis in that room, and then Q Robinson, a guy that they're really high on, showed a lot of promise. What are you thinking about like the edge room? Like, well, I'll say this: how do we take the dog out of these guys?
It's really rough because I don't think you can do much to this edge room because you already have 6 guys, and I think they all serve a very important role. I don't know. What are your thoughts on it? I'm curious to hear.
Speaking of like taking the dog out, why don't you go ahead and take your dog out real quick, Andy? I tried to set Andy up. He had told me he was going to have to take his dog out, and I ooped him, and we didn't quite hit. Mikey, listen, okay. I don't know what your problem is. Okay, I thought we were friends. You know, I thought all the bad blood between us was behind us. I thought we put water under that bridge, and here you come onto my show talking about one of my favorite guys being traded. So yeah, our Sheba, angry face at that, Mikey. And I will respect your co's, but I will not respect that opinion of yours simply because I'm much too emotional to process a Jonathan Cooper trade. Okay, it nearly broke me when the team traded Baron Browning, and I'm still not over that. And I still feel terrible for him that he's on the only bad team in that entire division. So, Mikey, thank you for watching. But no, I will not tolerate a Jonathan Cooper trade. Thank you. In terms of would we address edge in the draft, Andy, what do you think?
Sorry, in terms of how we address edge in the draft?
Yes.
Or
do we?
I don't think we do. I mean, I think we will, but I just don't know how we will. George Paton, I feel like always throws in an edge rusher pick when we least expect it. So I feel like there will be some form, whether it's like our top UDFA signing as an edge or, you know, just a day 3 flyer. It's tough though, because you already have Nick Bonito, Jonathan Taylor, Dondrea Tillman, Q Robinson, Jonah Ellis. Very good edge room. And it's, do you want to add a 6th in there? I don't know how you fit a 6th in with reasonable playing time. Just seems like there'll be a lot of healthy scratches. We saw Q Robinson healthy scratch for half the season. And when he came in, he was awesome. He was everything we wanted to see from him this year. But there just wasn't enough playtime out there because Jonah Ellis and Dondrea Tillman are phenomenal players. So I don't know. It's hard for me to picture where we would take an edge if we do. But ultimately, I could see it happen because George Paton, I feel like, puts a lot of stock into edge rushers, which is a good thing.
For sure. Anybody else that we need to consider before we move on to the sexy positions of need on this team?
Let's move on to those.
Fantastic. Well, then the first sexy position, and thank you for teeing us up here, Marky, inside linebacker. So real quick, I'm going to read CJ Allen, Jake Galday, or Jacob Rodriguez. I love Jacob Rodriguez. He is, if you have not watched him, I know you have, Andy, but if you're watching the show and you haven't watched Jacob Rodriguez, man, that dude is just a football player. He said, who would be the best value? Also, one of my favorite guys is Torian York. Curious what your thoughts are on him. So I will let you hook, Andy. Tell us about this inside linebacker position in the draft.
So the name commonly mocked to the Broncos in the first round is CJ Allen. I do not think I would not be a big fan of taking a linebacker in the first round, but CJ Allen does provide a very interesting skill set. He's super intelligent as a football player. He is the prototype green dot. He was the communicator in that Georgia defense. Like Kirby Smart, one of the most prestigious defensive head coaches in college football, put all of his trust into CJ Allen this past season, and it worked. He was really solid. I think he really established himself as a potential first round prospect, if not top 40 prospect. He's very fast, good pursuit, really good into the box. Ultimately, he would be one that if you trade out of 30 and trade down a little bit and get him at the start of the second, I would like. I'm just kind of against the idea of taking a linebacker in round one, that's where Jake Golday, you mentioned, comes in, who is a second round prospect in this draft. He'll be one of my top 6 linebackers probably. Operated in space a ton. Big time speed, good build at 6'4", 237. Someone I like a lot. And like if he was available at 62 and you're telling me he ends up a Bronco, that'd be a great fit. And then Jacob Rodriguez, the other one you mentioned, he was a quarterback at Virginia way back in the day, a walk-on quarterback at Virginia. In this past season at Texas Tech, he was literally the quarterback of that defense. He was a captain, like CJ Allen, great communicator, great leader, great green dot. Had 19 career forced turnovers, phenomenal ball production, phenomenal college football player. Ultimately, there is a lot of question with how athletic he can be, how he can hold up at the NFL. There's questions of if he's just a college linebacker. I think he can hold up in the NFL. I have a second round grade on him right now. And if he were to be the pick at 62, I'd be very happy with that.
And honestly, we've seen a bit of a transition at the linebacker position in the NFL of late. Like you've noticed it in safeties, you've noticed it in linebackers. You're not seeing a lot of like the 6'4", 6'5", 260, 270-pound inside linebackers anymore. There's too much speed, there's too much going on. And so you need those guys who are like a little bit more compact, who can go sideline to sideline, who can, cover running backs out of the backfield, who can cover tight ends. And yeah, so it's like I think I had said to you, it's like he's a first round skill set and a fifth round body. And I might have been a little bit premature saying that, man, because honestly, yeah, and Mikey brings up like, yeah, his aura is very good. You don't need big linebackers anymore. I had no idea that Dre Greenlaw was 6'1". I did a show with Mike Carmelini like a couple weeks ago, and I was talking about how Jacob Rodriguez seemed a little bit undersized and was smaller for an inside linebacker. And someone in the chat pointed out, they're like, Greenlaw's 6'1". And I literally Googled it on the spot because I was like, there's no way. But this is the transition that we've seen in the NFL where it's just like safeties, inside linebackers, they're just smaller thumpers who are more athletic guys than they used to be. Before we continue on talking about inside linebackers, let's talk about the situation right now. Obviously, Greenlaw under contract, a bit underwhelming in his first year, even came out and said that, learning this play, he said it was like learning Greek or Latin or some other sort of like weird dead language, which is a little bit disconcerting. I don't know if it's just Vance Joseph's defense is really complicated and it's different for an inside linebacker, or if it was just so different from him or from what he was used to that he just couldn't pick up on it. So hopefully next year, not only do we get a healthy Dre Greenlaw, but we get one that like understands the defense a little bit more intimately. But then there are the two guys, Ternad and Singleton, both free agents. Are you interested in bringing back either one of those guys?
I would be interested in bringing back Sternad, but there's been the reports that he only wants to be somewhere where he's a solidified starter, and I just do not think that would be here. Because you're going to
listen, Andy, I want to take a shit on a solid gold toilet, okay?
Yeah.
But sometimes our dreams are bigger than reality.
Yeah. I mean, hey, he could go start for like the New York Jets or something. Like,
if that's what he wants.
Pick your poison. Do you want to win a Super Bowl or do you want to start for the Jets? I would bring him
Kodiak,
back.
real quick. Oh, real quick. Kodiak giving you a shout out. Please feature Andy on the show, more permanent guest. And can we talk about going to 3 overall for Mike Washington? Don't you worry, Kodiak. We are saving the best for last, and that will be the running back position. And Mike Washington Jr. will be heavily favored because I don't know if everybody knows this, Andy. Me and you were the first people all aboard the Mike Washington hype train. It was years ago. I believe. When you were just a fetus, we were talking about Mike Washington before
Yeah.
anybody knew who he was. So patience, Kodiak. We will absolutely get to Mike Washington. The one guy in this entire draft that I will be absolutely pounding the table for in Mike Washington. So yeah. Back to the linebacker position. I know we covered a few of them. Shout out to the chat. And again, if you're in the chat and you want Andy's expertise on any of these guys, any of the positions that we're talking about, you want to know about a name, Andy's done his homework. Make sure that you drop it in the chat. Ask him what you want to know. And on your list, Andy, anybody that wasn't mentioned that you think the Broncos should keep an eye on in terms of inside linebacker?
Josiah Trotter from Missouri is a top 4 linebacker in the class for me. He'll either be 3 or 4. He's battling with CJ Allen for that 3rd spot.
And he's got the bloodline.
Yeah, he's got the bloodline. He is phenomenal downhill. Really good instincts in the run game. Phenomenal toughness. NFL bloodline, as you mentioned. There's questions in coverage, but I feel like there is with CJ Allen too. I feel like they're very similar players. But I love Josiah Trotter's work downhill so much, and just a physical run stuffing presence in linebacker who can go 0 to 60 in the box. A guy that I could see going as high as 30 if they decide to take a linebacker. But yeah, I think he goes in the top 50 range for sure.
Really quick, since we're not going to be talking about quarterbacks, Carter would love to know thoughts on adding Caden Salter as a backup quarterback. Let me take this one first, and then I'll kick it to you. Carter, if we want someone who is self-destructive and won't show up for meetings and isolates himself from his teammates and doesn't bother to learn the playbook, then yes, I think they should absolutely add Caden Salter if that's the kind of person that you want in your room.
Oh, buddy. Caden Salter would be lucky to be a backup in the CFL.
I love spicy Andy. I want to kick it back. Durant said we need to prioritize the offensive line over anything else. So first of all, Durant, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you commenting. We did touch on the offensive line. If you missed it, you'll be able to watch the show back. It'll be on YouTube and hopefully on Twitter. I think StreamYard was having some issues with the Twitter feed, but it will be on YouTube. So if you want to get mine and Andy's thoughts on the offensive line, we did talk about it at the end of the show. But here's what I want to address, and I'm going to use this as a segue. Our skilled players are plenty good. No, they're not. Need to make our running game more than the joke that it currently is. Yes. Offensive line. Okay. You're sort of right, Durant. Okay. They do need a better running game. In order to have a better running game, they need to have a better running back. I do not dislike RJ Harvey. He is not a bell cow, and that's okay. I don't think that they drafted him to be the bell cow. They drafted him to be the Darren Sproles type of player in this offense. He did that role very well. He's obviously not on the Sproles level, but the guy scored 12 touchdowns, right? But when he took over as the lead back, the run game suffered profusely, and you fix that by getting a bell cow running back. There's a reason that a seasoned running back like J.K. Dobbins was top 5 in the league in rushing by the time that he got hurt, and then we saw it drop off a cliff. So while you are correct that they do need to address the offensive line, and the offensive line needs to be a little bit better, especially in the run. Like, we know that they're good against the pass. The run blocking needs to be better. It's not going to matter if the stable of running backs that you have is what you carry on to next season. It's not okay. And this is the transition that I'll use, because you said our skilled players are plenty good. Tight end was not plenty good. Evan Ingram had as many touchdowns as Adam Troutman. They both had one, okay? I think Evan Ingram had something like 500 yards. Remember, Andy, when everybody was so excited that he was going to be the Joker of the offense, and it kind of turned out to be RJ Harvey? But nobody really knows, because Joker is an arbitrary term that everybody was waited on bated breath to discuss what they thought it meant. It doesn't actually mean anything. But I digress. Tight end wasn't good enough. Wide receiver wasn't good enough. Cortland Sutton was solid. He had a really good year. Clearly, he has a lot of chemistry with Bo Nix. I don't think that he's going anywhere, but he cannot be the number one. Not at this point. I'm sorry. And I'm a Cortland Sutton fan. I'm a Cortland Sutton truther. I have defended him relentlessly when few others would do it. 2 massive drops in overtime against Buffalo that could have cost them a game. 2 massive drops against New England that maybe shifts the momentum of that game and maybe ends up in a different result. As good as he is good for 1 big drop per game. So I'm not saying that Cortland Sutton isn't good enough, or that Troy Franklin isn't good enough and that he won't continue to progress, or Pat Bryant that he'll continue to progress, or Marvin Mims. If he decides to stop dogging routes that aren't coming to him and he can make sure that he's a force on the field, it's a solid room. They need a bona fide playmaker, 1B type of receiver. And I would say 1A, Andy, but it's like, I'm not even going to be greedy right now.
Yeah.
Okay. You have another superstar-esque receiver. You partner him with Cortland Sutton, and you can have like a Jamar Chase, T. Higgins dynamic. Obviously, I'm not comparing our situation to that, but it's just like you kind of have 2 number ones, and one is a little bit better than the other, as long as the other guy is a little bit better than Cortland Sutton going forward. Because again, you're only going to have Cortland Sutton for a couple more years. So to round it out, Duran, again, thank you for your comment. Appreciate you. Love the passion. Skill set players are not good enough, period. And we're going to start with the wide receivers. And this is a fun wide receiver class. And I think I'm not going to go up and scroll and find it. Somebody had mentioned Ted Hurst earlier, who I think, what is it, Georgia State?
Yes.
He's out of. Man, did that dude make himself some money at the Senior Bowl? My God, he is fun. And he's still maybe like the 12th best receiver in this draft. And that's not a knock on him. It's like, this is a pretty loaded receiver class, and it's a good year to need a receiver. So why don't you give me some of your top names, maybe some sleepers? This is where we're really going to get into the meat and potatoes, because these are the fun, sexy positions we get to talk about.
Yeah, I think the wide receiver class is the best part of this class. There are going to be an absurd amount of players, or absurd amount of receivers in my top 100. Obviously, you've got the Mekhi Lemon, Carnell Tate, and Jordan Tysons of the world. I'm not going to really go in depth on them because I don't think the Broncos will be in range for them. But the one I have been really, like my dream in the first round for the Broncos right now, has been Denzel Boston from Washington, and I was a little.
You come around on Boston a little bit.
Yeah. I was a little lower on him at first because I'd never know how to handle these big receivers, because some of them translate to the league and some of them don't. And the more I watched Boston, the more I said, he's 6'4", 210 pounds, and he's just such a good athlete at that size. Such good hands. I think he had a 3.1% drop rate. He's so good at the catch point. Really good at like boxing out corners and making the catch. And the comp I kept coming to in my head, and obviously it's a lofty comp, but I think if everything works out for Denzel Boston, I think he could have a Drake London type output. I think he plays a lot like Drake London. He doesn't have the juice necessarily to run by corners on a given rep, but he can catch it over them. He can separate vertically at an underrated clip. Like, he's a good player, good receiver through and through. And the other wide receiver that gets talked about in the range of Denzel Boston is Casey Concepcion from Texas A&M. He's a very good athlete. His route running has come a long way since his time at NC State. He routinely creates separation. The big pause on him is he had a 10.3% drop rate in 2025. There's just so many concentration drops, I feel like. But
so is he like a Kadarius Toney type, where it's just like freak athlete gets open, can't catch a cold?
That's that's the nightmare scenario with Concepcion for sure.
Right.
But I think he could definitely be like the good version of Kadarius Toney. I think if he gets good coaching in the league, can like step back that drop rate just a bit and get it to a reasonable
rate. The good thing is it can't get much worse.
No,
right?
It can't.
It's like over 10% of the passes that you drop. That's crazy. Like, you can only improve from there.
Yeah. I just think there's so much athletic potential here, so much separation ability, that he can just take the top off of defenses, and it's insane. Like, there are times where you're just watching him and you're just astonished based on like how he's able to just take the top off of defenses. There's a rep the other night I was watching from the LSU game where it was just a normal go, and the safety was playing back, and he just ran right past the safety and got it, and just ran right past him, just took the top off of LSU's defense. And that is the kind of output you get from Concepcion. High level athlete, and the big concern is the drop rate.
So is it like a little bit of a boom or bust prospect?
Yeah.
Marky brings up a really interesting name, and this is a guy that we have talked about. Like, and I don't like helmet scouting. I will admonish and discipline anybody who tries to helmet scout. But sometimes I'm guilty of it. Chris Brazell feels like a typical Tennessee wide receiver. Freak athlete, big, strong, fast, produced. And I want to get there. So talk me through Chris Brazell, because I know you're kind of teetering as well, where it's like there's a lot that you like, but then there's a good amount that you don't like.
Oh, I've been so back and forth on Brazell. And initially at the start, I can't lie, some of it was helmet scouting. Tennessee receiver, big guy who can just dominate college corners. I mean, this sounds like a prototype Tennessee receiver, but it was when I went back to the Georgia game back in September. He had 6 catches for 177 yards and 3 touchdowns against Georgia. Like, really solid defense, as I mentioned earlier. He had 1,017 yards and 9 touchdowns on the season. And as a player, he's 6'5", 200, little lean frame, but he gets to his top speed in a hurry. He's explosive out of his breaks. The route tree isn't huge, but the routes he runs, he converts on so many of them. The question ultimately comes, it's a Tennessee offense. A lot of his routes were either a hitch or a go, just the prototype college routes. And I just get so mad watching the Josh Heupel offense in Tennessee because there are so many of these prospects where I just want to see them asked to do more. And there was ultimately effort concerns with Brazell this past season, like on plays where they just spread the offense completely out and just run it up the middle. Brazell wasn't blocking on most of them. He was just taking a couple steps, faking a block, and moving on with the rep. The thing that I blame it on Heupel's offense a lot. And the one thing that I kind of take it as is in an RPO-based offense and a tempo-based offense where they run hurry up a lot, the idea of Brazell kind of faking a rep, and then if they hurry up an RPO again, and then he fakes it and then turns it into a go, which I think he did once or twice, then that is how he was able to get some of these big plays. The thing on Brazell and what makes me like him a lot and bank on the upside, because he's a very boom or bust player, you just don't see route runners like this at 6'5". And when I went back and watched his whole season a couple weeks ago, I was just really astonished with how he was so explosive out of breaks. How a 6'5" guy can generate that much yak. Really interesting player.
A guy that I want to ask you about, and then I'm going to kick it back to the chat. A dude that I absolutely love, but had the injury that, we don't know what that's going to do to his draft stock, is Chris Bell out of Louisville. I mean, goes to 6'2", 220 pounds, going to run a sub 4.5 40. Typical, like, yak guy, physical player, like a very poor man's type of Jamar Chase, right? And again, very poor man's. I'm not comparing Chris Bell to Jamar Chase, but it's like that's kind of like the vibe that you're getting with him. So do you expect him to fall? Because it's like, this is a guy that, if he had a good combine, a good pro day, maybe sneaks into the first round of the draft, or at least the very beginning of the second. Is his stock going to take a hit as a result of this injury? And is that a viable option for the Broncos, who, if Durant is right and the skill position is fine how it is, and you add a Chris Bell maybe midway through the season to give you a little bit of a boost, but then you're more drafting him going forward. And Marky chimes in really quick. Chris Bell would be wide receiver 1 in the draft had he not torn his ACL. So talk me through Chris Bell a little bit, because this is another guy I'm throwing the injury out. He's going to be fine eventually. He will play eventually. And if he drops, that is a massive value, in my opinion. And I think exactly the type of receiver that this Broncos offense needs.
Yeah, I think he's like if Xavier Legette was a good football player. And I think that's going to be my comp for him. I think my comp, word for word, is going to be if Xavier Legette was good, you have Chris Bell. And the idea of Xavier Legette being good is a really good player. I mean, that is
He's
just
phenomenal.
yeah, that is just like passing the eye test 101. The really good blend of size and acceleration. My most interesting note on him was he's the best receiver in the draft at crosser routes, just separating over the middle of the field at a really high rate, which I mocked him to the Broncos in my mock 1.0 because I was so enthused with the idea of adding a middle of the field weapon to the Broncos. Ultimately, I do think his stock will take a hit. At this point, I don't think he'll go round one just because of how much talent there is in this wide receiver class. You know, you could get a Denzel Boston, Casey Concepcion, Omar Cooper, who I will hit on in a little bit. But yeah, I mean, Chris Bell, if he is somehow able to fall to 62 or even in that range and the Broncos go up and get him, it'd be a really good pick because I think he's a really good fit. I think there's a lot of things that Sean Payton would love about him. I think he'd fit into this offense really well.
Agreed, man, 100%. Guy that Dak had mentioned, Skylar Bell, UConn could be sneaky good. Have you had a chance to watch any Skylar Bell yet?
Yeah, he's going to be in my top 100. And even that's selling him a bit short. He had 1,278 yards and 13 touchdowns at UConn this year. Really good production. And at the Shrine Bowl, I got some access to the Shrine Bowl practice tape, and he was only there for one day, but he did enough to raise his stock in that one day. There was just a little route. There was a little route where he just ran a curl, and then after the curl, caught it, turned around, literally left the defender in the dust, spun, just ran all the way down. And that's kind of what you get with Skylar Bell. He has sudden explosiveness that is really fun. He's an overage prospect. Didn't play a ton of top end competition because he was at UConn, an independent school, but he's a really interesting one. He'll be a round 3 guy for me.
David wants to know, does Heidenreich count as a wide receiver? Plays at every position. He could be a fun piece for this offense. I feel like Sean Payton would be the guy that would know how to use him, if anybody. How would you see him being used in the NFL? He's a really interesting prospect. That's probably a day 3 guy.
Yeah, he's gonna be a day 3 guy. I have no clue what position I'm gonna grade him as. I think I'll put him as like a.
You just have to do like every position.
Yeah, he's my running back. Well, he's my wide receiver. My tight end. I think I'll end up putting him as like a gadget running back, but he could do so much.
Yes, Mikey. There's a guy named Heidenreich. Mikey's big on the name scouting.
Yeah.
And I'm with you. Like, I think the name has to be sexy, right?
Yeah.
Like it has to make sense. Like when people are calling out names, and so yeah, Heidenreich is going higher on my board simply for that fact.
I mean, it's rare you find a guy with the worst name ever being good at the sport. Like that's kind of just the truth of the matter.
Marky said Brendan Thompson's the closest player to having Tyreek Hill speed. Could he be a good day 2 or 3 guy?
He's gonna go in day 2 for sure because I think he's gonna run the fastest 40 time this year, and I don't think it's gonna be particularly close. I mean, I've had people tell me that they think Brendan Thompson could break Xavier Worthy's record for the 40 time. He is so fast. Yeah, he led the SEC in receiving yards this past year. I mean, he could have led the entire FBS if he had good quarterback play. He's playing at Mississippi State, which is one of the worst teams in the SEC. Really productive, really fast. Ultimately, what holds him back is he's 5'9", 170, and the only way he was able to get most of that production was just running past college corners. But I mean, he could be a fun NFL piece, like a coach who would know how to use that speed. And
isn't that exactly what Troy Franklin was coming out?
Basically, yeah.
I mean, that brand of player.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were still going.
Oh.
Another guy, a guy that you had mentioned earlier, who I know, like love. I'm pretty sure he led the country in yak. He's one of the best yak receivers in the country, which again, this is what the Broncos need. Okay. And I want to preface this by bringing up Cortland Sutton again. We know like 50-50 balls to Cortland are more like 65-35, 70-30. Okay. Like we know what Sutton is capable of. I can't remember the last time that Cortland Sutton broke a tackle. It might have been 2019. Like, bro, how are you so big and so strong? And
Yeah.
you're getting routinely tackled by 5'10, 185-pound cornerbacks. A man that I don't think would have that problem, Andy, is Omar Cooper Jr. out of Indiana, who maybe kind of got lost in the shuffle because they had three really good wide receivers in that room at Indiana. But man, for my money, like I'm taking Omar Cooper above all of them.
Yeah.
And he's another guy that I think like as people cut his film and see what he's able to do with the ball in his hands, a guy whose stock will slowly start to rise throughout this process.
Yeah, I mean, I got back to him the other day and just knocked out his full season. And I'm saying this guy might go in the first round. I think he would be a really good option at pick 30, because he would be such a good fit. Above average strength, and for his play style, having good strength is just such a bonus. He is one of the best yak receivers in the class. Really good at the catch point. Natural ball tracker, very good, or very underrated physical presence. And then such a reliable receiver over the middle field. He catches it, turns on a dime, goes and runs all the way for a touchdown on some reps. I think, yeah, for my money's worth, I think he was the best receiver at Indiana this past season. And yeah, I think there's a big time case for him to go in the first round. He's one of my favorite options at pick 30. Yeah.
I would not be upset at all if the Broncos go with Cooper at 30. Last wide receiver that I want to talk about, a guy that you and I have discussed, and a guy that, again, had a really good Senior Bowl, showed out, Malachi Fields out of Notre Dame. Another type of receiver, 6'4", 218, big body, good route runner, really, really good hands. Like big and knows how to use his size. Like I feel like every year you're going to get big guys, right? You get receivers who are going 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", but just because they're big doesn't mean that they know how to use their body and they know how to use their size. Malachi Fields is one of those guys that does, and he's incredibly physical. And yes, as Mikey points out, passes the name test. I agree 100%. Maybe loses a couple points for his last name being Fields through no fault of his own, but maybe he can redeem that last name. So last receiver that I'll have you talk about, Andy, Malachi Fields.
Yeah, Malachi Fields is a true 50-50 go ball winner. He wins when the ball's in the air. It's pretty simply put. You saw it at the Senior Bowl. There was a one-handed catch he had against Pitt this past season that is just number one play on his highlight reel. It's going to be in terms of, you had to pick one highlight play for any receiver this process, stake your claim for a receiver prospect, and then their one play. Malachi Fields' one-handed catch against Pitt absolutely has to be in the conversation for that award. The one comp I see thrown around a lot, and I will co-sign on, is Michael Pittman Jr. I think they play a lot alike. Sneaky athleticism, need to improve the route tree, but they just win when the ball's in the air. And I think that Malachi Fields, hands at the catch point, catch radius, ball tracking, I think all that will translate. Good round 2 option, in my opinion, right now.
Any other wide receivers that you want to mention before we move on to tight ends?
I would be regretful if I didn't mention Ted Hurst, who David was talking about earlier, because I put his name in the Broncos chat the other day, and David definitely co-signed on the hype. I've been high on Ted Hurst for a while now. Georgia State receiver, 6'3", 207. You just don't find many high-level receiver prospects playing in these G5 ranks. Hurst battled through one of the worst football situations I've ever seen. Bad quarterback play. This team went 1-11. It was really bad, and he still found a way to get 1,000 yards receiving. He reminds me so much of George Pickens, just such a proficient vertical threat, deep ball tracker, good, sneaky good route runner, and then wins downfield at just such a high rate. One interesting note on him is that nobody in the FBS had more catches of 20+ yards over the past 2 seasons. So this guy has the production. And like I said, reminds me so much of George Pickens.
So, and the reason that I wanted us to list so many of these wide receivers is because this team needs one more wide receiver. The room is good. It is not good enough, and that's okay. There are so many options and so many guys in this draft, really throughout the first 3 or 4 rounds, of guys who can come in and make an immediate impact. And as long as you're banking on the fact that Troy Franklin continues to improve. Now, I don't think that we'll see the dramatic improvement that we saw from year 1 to 2, the same as like 2 to 3. But you bank on the fact that he's going to progress. You bank on the fact that Pat Bryant, who for my money is the best route runner in that room right now, and maybe the best yak guy in that room right now, that he's going to continue to progress. We saw him start to work in with Bo a little bit as Bo got comfortable with him. And that's a big part of this. That's something that I want to point out, Andy, is the receivers that have good chemistry with Bo. Those are the guys that are getting fed. That's why Cortland Sutton has so many receptions. That's why Troy Franklin had so many receptions. That's why those guys were 1 and 2. I think a big reason that they couldn't get Evan Ingram going, he and Bo weren't on the same page. Pat Bryant, as a rookie, he was working with the twos. He was on the same page with Jarrett Stidham during the preseason. And then as the season progressed, Bo continued to get more and more comfortable with a guy at Pat Bryant. So the reason that I bring that up, if and when they draft a wide receiver who hopefully will be the heir apparent to Cortland Sutton and eventually be wide receiver 1, they've got to work him with the ones. Bo Nix is one of these guys where it's like he will make any throw that you will ask for. He has to have trust and faith in that receiver. I mean, you go look at the pass that he threw to Troy Franklin that got him into field goal range to beat the Chiefs this past year. He is not throwing that ball to just anybody. That is a very, very point-specific throw, and he knows where that guy is going to be, but like to the letter. That's the kind of chemistry that Bo has to have with his wide receivers. And so whatever happens, you have to make sure that you're getting that receiver, like whoever they draft, let him run with the ones, let him get as much run with Bo as humanly possible, because that's how you start generating these wide receiver 1 conversations. Bo has to get there with those guys. Now, tight end. Lord Almighty, I really thought that we had something in Evan Ingram, and we were bamboozled. I did a whole ass like a litany of goofy content videos, basically begging for the Broncos to sign Evan Ingram. I drove to the facility as part of a bit, Andy. I don't know if you remember this. I was going to go up to the chains like Eric Andre and say, let me in, because they were doing the construction. And I was going to go demand that they sign Evan Ingram. And then, like, I wish I could just go back in time and slap my own damn self in the face, because it's like, bro, where were you all year? But it's okay. He is likely a cut candidate. So if we are moving on from Evan Ingram, if we are not re-signing Adam Troutman, and honestly, in that room, man, like, give me Nate Atkins and then clear the rest of it out. Atkins plays a very specific position. I think he's integral in some aspects of the Sean Payton offense. But let's start talking about tight ends. And I'm going to set you up just right now. Like, I think you and I agree there is a tight end 1 who is head and shoulders above the rest. And then there's a decent drop off, and then everybody else kind of fills in. Talk to me about my other ultimate draft crush, Kenyon Sadiq.
Yeah, night and day, the best tight end in this class, in my opinion. I think there's a multi-round gap from Sadiq, who is a round 1 grade for me, to tight end 2, who holds a third round grade for me, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But Kenyon Sadiq is just such a fun prospect. He's 6'3", 245, which doesn't meet the threshold for some guys. I'm fine with it. I think he makes up for it. He's a really good athlete. Such a good blend of explosiveness and play strength, really good quickness, good vertical threat. And I felt like there were plays where he could have had more production this year. A lot of people say the production was a red flag. He only had around 500 yards this year. But I feel like there were plays where it could have been, closer to 650 yards. And 10 touchdowns. Because I feel like him and Dante Moore were off target on some of the deeper throws. And as the season went on, they gained more chemistry. But I just feel like in terms of wanting a versatile tight end who can play in line, which we certainly want. We want an inline tight end who can work as a blocker.
And he's one of the better blocking tight ends in this class. There's a lot of good
Absolutely.
pass catching tight ends, Andy. Not a whole lot that are like proficient blockers who are also like serviceable pass catchers.
Yeah.
That's where the value comes in a guy like Sadiq.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to pick your poison. After Sadiq in this tight end class, you either have to pick, do you want an inline guy who won't be a prolific receiver for you, or do you want a slot receiver playing tight end who won't be able to block or play inline for you? And then you have Kenyon Sadiq, who is tight end 1 for a reason in this class and will be a first-round pick for a reason in this class because he has the versatility. He can play inline. He can block. There are some like technique issues that need to be worked out as a blocker, but in terms of just pure skill, he has it. I think there's, minimal flaws in his game. I think that is there a chance he's there at 30? I think there's a chance he's there at 30, but I think ultimately the best chance you have at getting him is moving up a few spots. Yeah,
Real
really fun
quick,
prospect.
Mikey had said earlier, and I'm not going to put the comment out because this is just insanity. But Oscar Delp can do both, Andy. God damn it. He had said that Delp was better than Kenyon Sadiq.
Oh.
He said, "You okay with that name?" Excellent point. Delp.
Oscar?
Oh, touchdown, Oscar Delp. Come on, Mikey. Don't pass the name test, man. What do you tell me what you think of Oscar Delp?
I like Oscar Delp, and there's so many just concerns with how little production he had. But yeah, I mean, as Mikey says, he actually can do both. He is one of the better blockers in this class, and I think there is a lot of upside as a receiver. He only had 261 receiving yards and 1 touchdown this year, but I feel like that was solely Georgia misusing him on offense. I mean, Georgia's offense this past season was really give it to Zachariah Branch and everyone else can take a back seat. And in turn, Oscar Delp took a back seat most of the year. But I think as a third, fourth round guy, I would be really intrigued to see, how they could work him in, especially if you sign someone in free agency and then in the draft, you address the tight end room with someone like Oscar Delp, who's versatile, well-rounded, has upside for production. It could be an interesting fit, and I would like it.
Give me your tight end 2 in this class based solely on like how he would fit in this Broncos offense. Because again, like there's a lot of different types of tight ends. And like you had said, you either want a guy that's proficient at blocking who will be a little bit of a liability as a pass catcher, or you're going to get a really good pass catcher who's a little bit of a liability blocking. And so based on like what you think these team needs are after the Kenyon Sadiq, who is your tight end 2?
I was really impressed when I went back and watched Justin Jolie from NC State. Initially, I thought he was just a big slot receiver, but when I looked back, I was actually impressed with him as a blocker. I think there are technique issues to work on, but in terms of this blocking tight end class for a pass catching receiver or pass catching receiving tight end, Justin Jolie has the tools to be a decent blocker in the NFL. I'm not going to say good. I think he could be a decent blocker in the NFL. He provides so much at the catch point. He's phenomenal at the catch point. Good size. I think he's like 6'3", 250 something. Top of the routes, he's really good. Solid route tree. Quick feet. Just a really like underratedly well-rounded tight end, which I did not expect when I went in to watch Justin Jolie. I thought we were just going to see a slot tight end who, I don't know, maybe fits into day 3 in this class. No, I would take him in round 3. He's my tight end 2 overall, and I think his ball-winning ability just makes it so intriguing on a Broncos perspective.
Happy-ass name. No
all right.
Give me some other tight ends that have caught your eye too.
One I have to mention, and I know that chat will like because a lot of the people I know in chat put me on to Eli Raridon, the Notre Dame tight end, who is 6'7", 251 pounds, and he's just a freak of nature. He's really athletic at that size. Somehow didn't score a touchdown this year. He had 482 yards with no touchdowns. You would think Notre Dame would be able to utilize a 6'7", 250-pound tight end in the red zone more. They didn't. But I'm really intrigued. Really good athletic talent. Ultimately, the red flags come up with the injury, and we'll see how whenever injury reports start coming out, we'll see how Raridan's stock is affected. But just as a football player, he is so interesting. He can play in line, like good blocker. And like if he has a good combine, if the medical comes back fine, he's certainly in the conversation for tight end too. Certainly a guy I would want to see in Denver.
Interesting. Anybody else before we move on to running back?
One I want to mention, and not because I'm astoundingly high on, but because he gets talked about a lot, is Eli Stowers, the tight end from Vanderbilt. A lot of the fantasy, like I've never seen a player with more disconnect from the fantasy community to the draft, like to the NFL draft analysis community. There is such a difference in grades between Eli Stowers. You get the fantasy analytic people saying this is a first-round player. You get the draft analysis people saying, I'd be comfortable with him on day 3. And I definitely lean towards the day 3 side. He gets talked about for the Broncos a lot, but I think he's a weaker blocker who just needs so much work in that department. Really fun slot receiver. And if you can find that true, like, capable blocking inline tight end 1, and you want to make Stowers your gadgety, gimmicky tight end 2, I think that would be a good fit for him. But for where the Broncos tight end room sits right now, Stowers would just be Evan Ingram all over again, I feel like.
And he kind of reminds me of like Oronde Gadsden coming out last year. Like Gadsden dropped as far as he did because he wasn't a blocker. Like he was basically just a slot receiver. And Gadsden had success in LA because they used him correctly. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's like if that's the guy that you're looking for, like you just want a big slot guy, like you don't bring back a little Jordan Humphrey or you don't bring back Evan Ingram. But yeah, I don't think that you're wanting to dedicate like a premium draft pick on a Stowers. Now, if he falls because of his frame, like a la Oronde Gadsden, and you get him in the 5th or 6th round, great. That's
be
fine.
phenomenal.
Find a role for him, but he's not going to be in line. He's not going to be an every down blocking tight end. Anybody else, Andy?
And the last one I'll hit on is Ohio State's Max Clare, who's a good athlete, 6'5", 243, good speed. Ultimately, I was disappointed by the production at Ohio State this year. And I mean, it makes sense when they have 2 elite wide receivers, Jeremiah Smith, who's going to be a top 3 pick next year, and Carnell Tate, who's going to be a top 10 pick this year. You ultimately can't be too upset about Max Clare's lack of production. But the one thing that really intrigued me was the one game where Ohio State had injuries to their weapons, and Max Clare really became the one. He had 7 receptions for 105 yards and 1 touchdown against Rutgers, but it is Big Ten play, and that is pretty bad defense. But he definitely did look good in that game. I think
the one time he was actually featured.
Yeah, I mean, for the one game we have that is actually like substantial for draft stock, he looked really solid. I think he could be a serviceable blocker, versatile player. I'm really interested to see where his stock ends up because I don't think he goes in round 2. I think his stock really starts in round 3. I think he could go anytime from like rounds 3 to 4.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think Sadiq is clearly the only round 1 tight end, and it's very likely we don't see a tight end go at all in the 2nd round. Like to me, there's that much of a drop off between Sadiq and then whoever ends up being tight end 2. Now the moment that everybody has been waiting for, the biggest need on this team, the biggest hole that we need to fill, and who better to fill a gaping hole than at AndyNFL. So let me preface this, Andy. J.K. Dobbins was fantastic. He gave us everything that we wanted and more. But there is an expiration date on J.K. Dobbins. I think we all knew that going in. I think we all expected it. And yet we're kind of inexplicably shocked when it finally happened. And I know that a lot of people want to bring back J.K. Dobbins. And I'm not saying that I am against it. But it's like it needs to be vet minimum. Give him 2 mil. Okay. Give him 2 mil, 1.75 mil for 1 year. He came out, he said all the right things. He's a fan favorite, and I get it. He considers himself a Bronco for life. Brother, you were here for half a season. Okay. Like, let's pump the brakes a little bit. And you know what? While we're at it, put your money where your mouth is. You want to be a Bronco for life? Here's a vet minimum contract. Have it incentive laden, like heavy incentive based contract where he has to play a certain amount of games. He has to rush for a certain amount of yards. He has to get a certain amount of carries. If you do that, then I'm all aboard the J.K. Dobbins hype train. And I like him. I love him. I want some more of him. The problem is that year after year after year, he has consistently proven that while he is one of the better running backs in the NFL when he is on the field, he cannot stay on the field, which is why I'm going to circle back to a guy in free agency before we get to the draft that I pounded the table for this team to trade for, who is now a free agent, who I think that you can get at a pretty decent discount, who has the skill set to be a bell cow, and that is Tyler Algier. I am going to lose my shit in the best way possible if this team adds Tyler Algier. I love this guy. I loved him coming out of BYU. And Andy, a lot of people forget he rushed for 1,000 yards his rookie season on a bad Atlanta Falcons team. And of course, like, Bijan Robinson's better. That's okay. Bijan Robinson is the best running back in the NFL, frankly, by a pretty wide margin. So I understand why Bijan is getting 25 carries a game and Tyler Algier is getting 6 or 7. I get that. Tyler, you want to be a 1,000-yard rusher again? You want to rush for 10-plus touchdowns? You want to be the bell cow of a really good offense? Come to Denver, my brother. I am going to pound the table as hard for Tyler Algier as I will for this team to draft Mike Washington. So, Kodiak, you're close. And I like Brees. I think Brees might price himself out a little bit based on what this room wants to do, which is why we're going to pivot and we are going to go for Tyler Algier and Mike Washington. So without further ado, Andy, as the conductors of the Mike Washington hype train, it's all aboard. Choo-choo, motherfucker. Tell us about Mike Washington Jr. out of Arkansas.
Yeah, I remember when Mike Washington was the first add to the Senior Bowl, and I was familiar with him on the surface level, but I said, "Ooh, this is an interesting one." Now I'm gonna sit back. I'm gonna watch Mike Washington's season. I'm gonna just see how he is. I sat back. I watched, and I was like, "How is this guy so low on the consensus board? This is at least a top 120 player at that time. Now he's a top 100 player." But then he was mocked in like rounds 5 or 6, and I'm like, this is a 3rd or 4th round guy, and he showed it at the Senior Bowl. Really good size. I think he was verified in at 6 foot, 228 pounds, 6.4 yards per carry, had over 1,000 yards, really productive in the SEC on a bad Arkansas team. I mean, that was they were bad. Yeah. And he always stood out for Arkansas, I feel like. And you didn't really see it on broadcast when I would sit back and watch some Arkansas games on broadcast because I was interested in Taylon Green as a quarterback prospect. Oh boy. But Mike Washington really just stood out when I went back and watched the tape of the season. Good elusiveness, really good vision, which this running back room needs. I think he would be a really good fit as that kind of power element with, sneaky explosiveness, really smooth. I think he is a top 3 running back in this class. I currently have him as my RB3 and would be a phenomenal fit in Denver.
I'm not going to compare him to Derrick Henry because I'm not one of these people that's going to compare a kid that's never played it down in the NFL to a future Hall of Famer. And you're going to see a lot of that. Quick public service announcement if you're into the draft. When they do these player comps, and they're comping, they're like, oh yeah, well this guy, his pro comp is LaDainian Tomlinson. It's like, no, he's not one of the best running backs of all time. So what I mean from this comp is from sheer size, brute force, strength, speed, power combination. This is exactly the kind of running back this Broncos team so desperately needs right now. I am sick of looking literally above the running back room because every running back in that room is shorter than me and lighter than me. Now, I'm pretty stout, okay? I'm going 5'10", 205, okay, on a good day. I don't want another running back who's smaller than me. Can't have it, okay? So you bring in the antithesis of what that is in Mike Washington and just run through people. He
Yeah.
runs behind his pads, he keeps his legs turning, he runs angry, isn't dragged down by arm tackles, and he's a decent pass blocker,
Yeah.
and he's a pretty proficient pass catcher. So it's like this is everything that you could want and more. And if we look back, like if we're basing the model off of what we've seen from Sean Payton in the past, I wouldn't necessarily say, Andy, and chat, you can correct me if I'm wrong. He's never necessarily had like the big, like a big bowling ball type of guy. He's had like, your Mark Ingrams of the world. I think Latavius Murray when he was young, who maybe you could kind of classify as that. I would be hard pressed to say that Sean Payton has never necessarily had a Mike Washington build of a running back in terms of like size, speed, combination. And honestly, man, again, that's exactly what this offense is missing. When you're trying to run the ball in January, hopefully in February, late in the season, hopefully you get another home playoff game that, and if it's 30 degrees and snowing again, you think anybody's going to want to tackle Mike Washington in the third and fourth quarter? Absolutely not. So everybody knows how we feel about Mike Washington. And like I said earlier in the show, that's the guy, like during this process, I'm going to push the Mike Washington to Denver agenda hard. But we also do have to talk about other people. And so Kodiak brings up comp love to Emmitt Smith, Price to Barry Sanders, Mike Washington to Jim Brown, Jonah Coleman to Walter Payton. Okay, well,
That's ethical.
Yeah, you're hilarious, Kodiak. I appreciate that. But let's do this. Jeremiah Love, obviously the best back in this class, probably the only running back taken in the first round.
Yeah.
But you're running back too. And another guy that, maybe is in play, maybe not at 30, Andy. I'm not a big fan of taking running backs in the first round unless you're getting like a Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey type of player who, can run the ball 20, 25 times a game and catch the ball 5, 10, 15 times a game. But Jadarian Price, the other Notre Dame guy, who maybe would be getting more attention had it not been for Jeremiah Love. What do you think of Jadarian Price?
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, this guy was behind Jeremiah Love for the whole year, but there were times in the year where they would switch out Love and Price. Price would make a big run, and I'd say, "Oh, another big play for Jeremiah Love," and then I realized, "Oh, that was Jadarian Price. They have another one? What? They have another one?
They have two of these things?"
Yeah, like they just have the two best running backs in the draft. Cool. He anticipates lanes, cuts through very well, really good vision, explosive player. His explosive run rate, I think, was at the top of the class, and he brings value as a returner, which is really interesting. There is the thing that I like the most about him at this point is you see so many running backs enter the league with so much tread on their tires, like just so much work, just so much usage in college. Jadarian Price averaged fewer than 10 offensive touches per game in both 2024 and 2025. So he is not he does not have much tread on his tires at all. And he's shown so many traits to translate to the league very fast. And I probably wouldn't take him at 30, but if you were to trade down out of the first and first couple picks in the second, you take Jadarian Price, that'd be a really good pick.
What other running backs are we looking at? So we've established like it's the two Notre Dame guys, 1 and 2, pretty definitively.
Mm-hmm.
I think you and I agree. We're slotting Mike Washington in at running back 3 right now. And I'm going to throw out some names for you. And I know you have your rankings, but just kind of tell me how you're feeling about them. Jonah Coleman, Emmett Johnson, Nicholas Singleton, Katrin Allen, Damon Claiborne, and we'll start there.
Yeah, not Jadarian Price. Jonah Coleman comes in as my RB5. We'll go out of order slightly here. Jonah Coleman comes in as my RB5. really productive over his time at Washington. He's a guy I see mocked to the Broncos a lot. Had 758 rushing yards and 17 touchdowns this past season. I'm I'm not as high as some people on him. There's a lot of people out there who have him as RB2, RB3. I'm not that high, but I do think this is a top 100 player. He reminds me so much of this Tyler Algier mold. Um, high side like a David Montgomery type, where I think he'll be a very good 2 in the league or very good committee back. I don't think he'll ever be like a true 1, but I think he could really establish himself in a committee. And I think polar opposite play styles is RJ Harvey, really. So definitely a guy I could see in Denver. I would be really intrigued to see like a Jonah Coleman, RJ Harvey backfield. I think that would fit well.
And let's move on. Emmett Johnson, who I do not want, who I do not like, who I have immense disdain for, simply because of where he went to college. I'm not going to watch his film. I will not be told by anyone, especially someone like Cameron Parker, how good
Yeah.
Emmett Johnson is. I don't care that he has a great name. I mean, Emmett, the fact that he's a running back named Emmett and his last name is Johnson, it's a great name. Don't care. Wrong school, wrong colors, wrong fit for Mario. I refuse to root for a Nebraska Cornhusker in the league. But what do you think about it?
I mean, this is where helmet scouting is beneficial. I mean, who wants a Nebraska Cornhusker on their roster?
Exactly.
Not
This is,
altitude
this is the
adjustment.
only helmet scouting we allow.
Yeah, no Cornhuskers. Very agile, probably one of the most elusive running backs in the class. Sharp footwork. I don't think he's a fit in Denver. I just think he's too similar to RJ Harvey. I think he is probably better than RJ Harvey, but they're just too similar to where using like a second round pick or a early you trade up in the third for him. I just don't think that's too wise because I don't really see how a backfield with Harvey and Johnson would work. But I think Emmett Johnson's a really fun prospect, and I think he'll be good somewhere else. I just don't think it makes a lot of sense in Denver.
And then a guy that the chat's talking about, Nick Singleton, ran like he was in cement after Penn State started to fall off. Nick Singleton fall off. So sad. This one cuts me deep, Andy, because the way that I feel about Mike Washington this year, that's how I felt about Nicholas Singleton last year. And he inexplicably went back to school. I don't know if he thought that they had a chance to win the national championship. I don't know if he thought that he would improve his draft stock, even though he probably was going to be a day 2 guy. And I can't wrap my head around it. He looked like a completely different player this past season than he did the year before. Like during the season, like what I'll do during the college season to try and keep up with some of the prospects that I like. I'll check out the box scores before I start watching much film. And it was just like a routine thing with Singleton where it's just like he's averaging under 3 yards a carry, in these games. He's not catching the ball like he was the year before. He's not scoring touchdowns. He's not having these big time runs. I don't know if you've watched his film from, this past season versus like the year before. If you have, like, what do you attribute this to? Like, did he just regress out of nowhere? Like, I know you and I have talked about it. You think that he'll be a better pro than he was this past year simply because, like, his skill set is insane, man. 6 foot, 220 pounds. He's probably going to run a sub-4, absolute freak athlete. He was a great receiver once upon a time. Like, talk me through this. What happened to Nicholas Singleton?
Yeah, I thought he should have declared last year because I thought he would. I actually thought at this time last year that Nick Singleton, or not this time because he had decided he was going to go back, but like around this time last year before he decided to go back to school, I thought he was going to be a Bronco. Like I actually thought that was a really good fit, and
Perfect fit.
And he decided to go back to school.
He felt like an Alvin Kamara type last year, Andy.
Yeah, he did. Penn State regressed as a whole. It was bad. It was bad football to watch this year, simply put. And Nick Singleton was one of the catalysts. Like, he did not look good through the early part of the season. He definitely picked it up as the season progressed, but he was very inefficient. I feel like the vision wasn't as good. I feel like there was regression in areas. And then in the Senior Bowl, we get the news that he broke his foot, which hurts his stock even more. So...
Yeah, because now he's not going to be able to participate at the combine, and it went from bad to worse for
Mhm.
Singleton for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he was a solidified day 3 guy really going into the Senior Bowl, but we thought, this guy could be a fun 4th round flyer. And now we're kind of at the time where it's like 5th or 6th round because you got to anticipate the injury recovery. And it just sucks for him because he could have been a 2nd rounder last year, goes back to school, and now we're talking about him as like a 6th round guy, which
Yeah,
just
for
sucks
sure.
for him.
The other Penn State running back who, for my money that year, 2 years ago, was not nearly as good as Singleton, was kind of the plotter of the group, now has overtaken Singleton in a lot of people's eyes, is Katron Allen. And I know you and I had joked about, like, we said, if you could take Nick Singleton's size and athletic ability and then just give him Katron Allen's ability to be a running back, you'd have the perfect running back. So where do you see Katron Allen on your list?
He's my RB6 right now. I think he's I think he's gonna be, in terms of the 5 guys I have going in dates, like day 1 or day 2. I think Katron Allen fits in as the first running back off the board in the 4th round. He had 1,300 yards this past season with 15 touchdowns. Really productive back, really smart, really good vision. Just a fundamentally sound running back. Doesn't have the athletic traits, and that's ultimately why he's a day 3 pick. There's questions of, is this just a good college running back? Will he adapt to the NFL? I think he'll be pretty solid. I think he's a committee back at the next level. Don't think he's a 1, but I think he could fit in somewhere. Could be Denver as like that early 4th round kind of guy who you just plug and play into a committee.
Kodiak said, yes, I love AA altitude adjustment in overtime. Nobody gets this stream banned. Frankie's not invited onto the stream, so we will not be getting banned. But appreciate you, Kodiak, for hanging out this whole time. Give me a couple late round flyers. And one of the things that we had talked about doing that I had kind of said to you, Andy, is like, I don't understand valuations of running backs. It's like you have your guys at the top of the draft who are like, definitively bona fide stars. They're going to be good, like your Jeremiah Love of this draft. A guy that I was incredibly high on last year was Brashard Smith, who I think went in the 7th round, correct? And honestly, I think he's way better than the Chiefs, than how the Chiefs used him. I thought they used him wildly incorrectly. But like never in a million years would have guessed that he falls into the 7th round. Like Damian Martinez was a guy that I was really high on. I think he was an undrafted free agent. And so since there's such a discrepancy of like valuations of running backs, give me some late round targets, like guys that, like aren't in this grouping necessarily. We're going to be day 3, maybe even undrafted free agency picks, like Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt, a guy that kind of comes out of nowhere. Not a lot of people knew about him and, ended up having a really good season. Or a Manung guy who I really liked coming out. Another guy that I was shocked fell as far as he did. And then even like kind of like took the bait, Andy, a little bit on a guy like Manung. I started to doubt myself and be like, oh yeah, well, he's not that good. He's clearly not good because he went in the 6th round or whatever it was. And so clearly plenty of value all across the draft and into the undrafted free agency. So give me some late round names to keep an eye on.
One that if you like Brashard Smith, you were going to like Adam Randall, the Clemson running back who was a former receiver who had a very productive season. Would fit, that kind of gadgety running back mold. I think he had 1,000 total yards this year, 13 touchdowns, as I mentioned. Just really productive. I think he's Brashard Smith to a T. It's really just a subjective running back group, and I haven't gotten through a lot of it, so I don't have a full list of day 3 sleepers now, but I think Adam Randall would be a guy I'm interested in because of just how gimmicky he can be. And like if a good coach gets his hands on him, Randall could be a fun player in the NFL.
And any other running backs that you want to mention while I got you here?
I think the last guy I could mention is Demon Claiborne. I don't know how to pronounce it. From Wake Forest. He had 907.
He needs to change his name to Demon.
Demon Claiborne. That's what I thought his name was. I wrote that on my board for him when I started his evaluation pretty early in the season. I wrote him down as Demon Claiborne because I thought that was his name, but it was Demon. I was like, oh man, what a letdown! What a letdown! He had 1,000 total yards this past season.
He just needs to drop the D.
Literally, it's not
drop
that
the
hard.
D at the end of his name, and he's Demon.
It's not that hard. He'd be a 1st round pick. Who's not taking that?
You have to draft a demon in the first round. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter what your grade on him is.
Yeah, he had some really good games early in the season. I remember the Georgia Tech one really pulled me in. He had 128 yards, 2 touchdowns in that game, and I believe, 27 and 25-yard touchdowns. True home run hitter. There's some inconsistency, just run to run, but his explosive plays are jaw dropping and fits into the day 3 portion of this class, but a really fun one.
The last guy that I want to mention, and a guy that you and I had talked about that I said would be a really fun dart throw, and I don't know if he gets drafted, but just based on like with running backs, I feel like you have to rely on skill set a lot. Like production is going to be important, but if you get him in the right room, you get him with the right offense, and like a coaching staff that knows how to work with them, you can mold these guys. And so that guy is Chip Trayanum. And he was one of Feldman's freaks. If you're unfamiliar, like if you're in the draft space, Bruce Feldman does his freak list every single year, and it's really fun. And like some of those guys end up being absolute monsters, and some of them it's like look like Tarzan, play like Jane. But again, like if he's a 7th round pick or even an undrafted free agent, training him, he goes 5'11", 233 pounds, expected to run a sub 4.3. I don't know if he got a combine invite. I assume that he'll just have a pro day. Benches 415 pounds, squats 650 pounds, and was clocked in at 22 miles per hour. I haven't watched much film on him, but the film that I have watched him has been really fun. I don't understand necessarily why more teams aren't talking about Chip. Maybe it's just because, it's like not a lot of film to go off of, like not a ton of production. Have you gotten a chance to watch him at all? And I just wanted to get your thoughts on Chip. Is it Trayanum? Not a great name.
Trayanum?
To be
I
sure.
don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
You just got to call him Chip. Like Chip is good, but
Chip
that last
T.
name is a nightmare. There you go.
T. Ultimately, a lot of the pause. I've asked around about him. I've asked after I watched him, I was like, oh, this guy's pretty good. I think he could be like a top 10 running back in this class. And a lot of the pause came. He has a rough injury report. He's just very injury prone, and that's where a lot of the pause comes on him. And mesh that with G5 player. This is a day 3 guy, but I'm really intrigued. I think he'd be a fun late day 3 dart throw.
Andy, thank you so much for your time, man. Anything else, anyone else that you want to shout out or any names that you want to drop for the chat to keep an eye on, or anybody watching the show to keep an eye on as this draft process really starts to ramp up?
To be honest, I think I've hit everyone, but the last guy I kind of want to touch is a true football player, every sense of the word. Kalen Black from Indiana won the national championship and then went to the Senior Bowl and absolutely showed out. That's what you love to see. Had 1,000 yards, had 10 touchdowns. Just, there's not a ton to say about him because he's just like Isaiah. He's just Isaiah Pacheco. Think of that. Fun day 3 guy and could fit into a committee like Denver.
And it wouldn't be an altitude adjustment show. Oh, click the wrong thing there. Wouldn't be an altitude adjustment show if we didn't mention A.T. Perry.
He's a star now.
The chat kept trying to get me to bring him up earlier, and I wouldn't budge. But you know what? Since we're closing out, we will close out with an A.T. Perry shout out. On behalf of Andy and myself, I just want to say to everybody, thank you so much for watching, and also you're welcome for this fantastic show. And a lot of people are wondering, Andy, we've never done a show, just the two of us before, and I'm sure a lot of people in the chat, a lot of people watching the show are wondering how we were able to so seamlessly do an hour-and-a-half show, made it feel like it was no time at all, provided so much great entertainment and information. How were we able to do that like this?
Because you don't just have 2 stars. That's a planet. You got 2 planets.
You don't just have 2 stars with Mile High Mario and AndyNFL. That's a planet. You got 2 planets. But before we get out of here, Andy, plug all of your stuff. Where can we find your incredible content? Where can people support you and see all of your genius at work?
Yeah, at AndyNFL on Twitter is where I post every day. New prospect, I just kind of post who I like. There's no chronological order. Someone pops in my mind, I'm like, oh, I can make a post about them today. It's kind of just how I roll. But Substack is at AndyNFL. Also, I think I should have a updated top 100 big board out within the next 2 weeks. Hope probably sooner than 2 weeks. But yeah, I mean, we're full swing in the draft season. Very fun time.
Fantastic. Thank you, man, so much for joining me. I appreciate your time. Awesome job. Wonderful information. You killed it like I knew you would. At AndyNFL, Mile High Mario. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see y'all next week. Okay, love you. Bye-bye.
Hey, Bill, I'm in the mood for a switch up. I hit the function, hit the rose till I hiccup. I hit the stage.